engage this seeming new global experience. Geoffrey Onyeama is Nigeria's very highly educated and cerebral foreign minister. He continues with us to address this matter. Please join us in our concluding discussion with Mr. Geoffrey Onyeama. So in terms of now Africa as a whole, we have things like AGOA, African Growth and Opportunity Act. We have the Millennium Challenge Account Corporation that was set up by George Bush. Yeah, those really helped many African countries. And then the New Power Africa initiative from President Obama. In your evaluation, is there like a potential risk to these facilities? Starting, let's say, with AGOA, which I think I would imagine Nigeria has not utilized it much, but other countries have.
Yeah, this is it.
Yeah.
You're quite right. We haven't utilized it much. Yeah, it's a framework that that is there for the benefit of African countries, and we'll have to see the priorities of Donald Trump and whether those building blocks that were put in place by his predecessors are things that he will pursue. Now,
because they don't look like America first. Because if you give tariff-free things to Africans to bring stuff in that can displace American workers, it doesn't sound like America first. That's my fear. Is that part of the America? Should we see it as part of the America first statement?
Well, I mean, I think that maybe he also has never really defined exactly what America first means and the extent and the scope of America first.
Yes.
Clearly, the U.S. cannot pursue a 100% isolationist policy. That is not possible in the world today. And it's not even in the interest of the United States. So, it'll be interesting to see the limits of that. Okay, you have the NAFTA, which they want to withdraw from. So, if that's the limit of the America First thing, then yeah, one can maybe understand it. But another thing is that Africa does not represent much of a trade threat to the U.S. In terms of exports to the U.S. and taking jobs over from the U.S. So something like AGOA is just a drop. Is a drop in the ocean in terms of economics. If they had a similar thing to AGOA with, say, the Asian tigers or China or the European Union, well, there I would say, yes, he will probably abrogate it. Yeah. But, to Africa, as you said, Nigeria hasn't even made use of that facility, to start with. And then the hurdles in terms of what you can export, quite high for a lot of African countries. So, so I mean, I would say that in terms of real impact and significance, AGOA is very, very low down. Even impact for African economies, it's pretty.
What about a thing like major. Power Africa, where they're looking to mobilize companies like GE, other American companies, and even support from the U.S. government into that endeavor? Can that be threatened by?
Well, I think the first question you really have to ask is what have been the concrete deliverables of Power Africa? What has it meant? Significantly, what has been the input to by the U.S. government into it? If you look at it, basically, very often a lot of these initiatives of the Americans is like encouraging U.S. businesses, like you say, GE and others, to maybe invest a little bit more here or a little bit more there and give them maybe some incentives to do so. But it's not, they often don't represent a major commitment of the U.S. government itself. Yeah. And I think that's also one of the things that a lot of developing countries notice about U.S. assistance. The government itself does not engage public funds and resources, state resources, to to go out and support countries. There are a few that they do militarily, like maybe what they give to Israel and to Egypt, that have been approved by by Congress and things like that. But otherwise, it's more just facilitating private sector actors in the U.S. to get engaged.
Should African leaders have taken the initiative to go see President Trump first and not wait and see? Because it looks like what we're doing is we're taking a wait and see posture. Let's see what he does. But how about helping him to define to him how we want to be seen, the way we want to relate with him? Did you think African leaders should have gone maybe right after his election, when he was waiting to be sworn in, to begin to engage him?
Well, no. In international relations, you don't go unless you're invited.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
What about informally?
Heads of state. Yes, informally. That's that's going on, because what you do there is you start engaging with the officials around.
The Europeans, in looking at Africa, tended to, or lately, it appears that they don't want to be dealing with Africa as a whole, but to deal with countries on a one-on-one basis. Can African countries one-on-one handle Europe?
That's a very good question. That's in fact also a very topical question. Can they handle? Yes, I mean they have been negotiating.
Handle, but effectively not handle by just handling.
But why I say it's a good question is because, as you know, the AU summit in Addis Ababa in January, the African heads of states themselves decided that this should no longer be the case. That individual African countries should not be negotiating or engaging with the European Union, that it should be regional group versus regional group. And they've appointed the president of Uganda, President Museveni, to be responsible for refashioning that engagement and relationship with the European Union. So if the European Union wants to engage with any African country or whatever, it has to engage with the African Union and not directly with any individual African country, for the reasons that you bring out.
What powers do you have to enforce that as the EU? I mean, if I'm president of a country and I need something badly, I can get it from the EU. I mean, why must I first wait to see what the African Union says?
Okay, it's not an imposition of the African Union. It's a consensus of the African Union presidents themselves.
The consensus I voted because everybody else voted, but I need something badly now.
Well, of course, every country is sovereign for everything. So there's never anything that anybody can do about what a country does. The country is sovereign. But in terms of being able to really negotiate effectively, it's not always obvious.
What has driven the much closer relationship that we see now between China and the African continent, in your view?
Well, it's very clear. A lot of benefits that they've been able to get from China that they have not been able to get from the Western countries. I mean, so it's clearly a question of who can address your needs the best. And a perfect example of this, right from the early 60s, is if you look at the Tanzam, the railroad from Tanzania through to Zambia at the time. The Western countries said, no way, it was not profitable for them. They were not interested. The Chinese came in and built it. And we've seen, the Chinese are able to to spend and provide a lot more than Western countries can do, and that is essentially what has driven.
Well, why are they doing that? What's in there? Well, how is that in their interest to spend?
The Chinese?
Yes. Why? What was their motivation for doing that?
You win friends.
Honorable Minister, I want to thank you so very much.
Thank you for having me. I've enjoyed it.
Thank
you. Thank you. So are you.
Job.
Thank you, and good luck.